Hey now, happy Wednesday and welcome to 580 Sports Talk following a Kansas City Royals series and getaway day loss to the Detroit Tigers. Welcome into the program. Welcome to our 580 studios on Huntoon Hill right here in the capital city. I'm Brendan Dzwierzynski flying solo with you in studio for one more day. Not all alone though. Kyle Manthe is here with us again. He's keeping us on the air. He'll join us a little bit later on today for this week's edition of One Gotta Go and for What Is Wrong With You coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. Obviously, we do have a bunch of Royals baseball to get to today. Boys in Blue losing to the Detroit Tigers for the second time in 3 games in the series, but some good baseball last night. Well, some good pitching last night. A great outing from Daniel Lynch. We got the best version. It didn't miss a lot of bats, but the best version for the most part of Daniel Lynch last night. We got to see why I still think of all the still somewhat young arms that the Royals have, why he is the most likely one to be a long-term viable member of this Royals rotation. And by contrast, today we got the flip side of that. We got a guy in Brady Singer who I don't think is that, who I think continues to prove that he probably does not belong in that role for the long haul. And if we're going to get the maximum amount of success and the maximum value out of Brady Singer, it's probably with him coming out of the bullpen and not in a full-time starting lineups or starting rotation, excuse me. So we will talk about that coming up here in just a minute as we lead off this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. As I mentioned, we've got One Gotta Go this hour as well. Plus, something we talked about with Matt Verderam yesterday that I wanted to just address talking about the NFL today. Dalvin Cook wants to team up with DeAndre Hopkins. And I don't know exactly what Hopkins wants as well, although he did have some cryptic tweets yesterday. If that is something those two actually want to have happen, that's further confirmation that the Chiefs are not going to go after DeAndre Hopkins. So we're going to talk about some of the still available NFL free agents coming up here later on this hour. Also, in the 5 o'clock hour today, Joel Corey from CBS Sports, we've had on the show many times, former NFL agent, now analyst for CBS Sports and their NFL coverage. His thoughts on the Chris Jones negotiation and why Chris Jones may have given up a little bit of his leverage with some of the things he's said this offseason, or at least since the Chiefs won Super Bowl 57, and also what he expects a future Chris Jones extension with the Chiefs to look like. That's coming up in the 5 o'clock hour today. A lot of college sports to get to, mostly in the 4 o'clock hour. Our pal Shahan Jayaraja from CBS Sports came out this week with his Big 12 football win total over-under predictions. He's got the Vegas line, the over-under line for all 14 teams in the Big 12 for next year, for this coming year, I should say. He predicted over their projected win total, under their projected Vegas win total. We'll break it down. He's got K-State going over. He's got KU going under. Why and why? We'll break those down, plus the other ones from Shahan's predictions that stand out to me. That's coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, as is our chat that we do every Wednesday with Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. It's the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz got to talk to Jerome Tang this week. His 3 Life of Fitz podcasts for season 4, I believe it is, of that podcast series now. He's gotten to talk to Chris Kleiman, Bill Snyder, Jerome Tang. Does anyone in the K-State sphere have a higher approval rating right now than Chris Kleiman, Bill Snyder, and Jerome Tang? I'm not sure that there is. Maybe Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel individually. Maybe the two of them have the same kind of positive reception, same kind of approval rating in the K-State sphere right now. But we'll talk to Fitz about that conversation, about a little bit of a recruiting nugget he got from Coach Tang as well. Some thoughts on the big recruiting weekend for K-State football. All that coming up at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. We've also got a full edition of our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll take a look at the basketball tournament bracket. Yes, the TBT coming back again, and a pretty fun bracket down in Wichita if you were interested in going just about a month from now. KU, K-State, Wichita State, Missouri, Arkansas, all these local programs, all their alumni teams are going to be in the same region. Very excited about that. So we'll talk about that a little bit coming up later on today. As I mentioned, our 580 Sports Talk headlines, what is wrong with you, one gotta go, all that, all of your usual Wednesday staples coming up on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. You are welcome to be a part of the show, either on the text line, 785-272-9429. That is our text line number. Let us know your thoughts on the Royals losing today, winning last night. Singer, Lynch, anything that's going on with the Royals right now. Or your thoughts, frankly, on anything else we're talking about on the show today. Also, the YouTube comment section is open. You know the name of our YouTube channel. It's called Sports on 580 WIBW. It's easy enough to find. Just go to youtube.com, search Sports on 580. Our channel will be the first result, and that's where you can hop into our comment section, share your thoughts, watch the live stream, etc., etc. The Royals this afternoon really a letdown after last night. Now, granted, the win on Tuesday night was not exactly the most encouraging Royals game of all time. They won, which was great. They shut out the Tigers. That was great. Daniel Lynch was awesome. Their offense just wasn't really any good. They only had one hit, I believe it was, with runners in scoring position. 2 hits, with runners in scoring position. Michael Garcia was great. He had 3 hits. He went 3 for 4 in the game. That was awesome. And that's really all they needed. He comes around on a Matt Beatty hit, and that was enough for the Royals to beat the Tigers. And you got to see why I think Daniel Lynch has the ability to be the best option long-term for this Royals team, to be an established piece of the starting rotation. So I don't know exactly what the long-term forecast the Royals have for Lynch is, and it stinks that he has missed so much time this year. He's only made a handful of appearances. I believe it is now 5, and I've got the notes on them right in front of me. Yeah, he's made 5 outings so far this year, to varying levels of success. And he's only got one more year after this one. And I do think that is, or he's got, one more pre-arb year after this one. Then he gets into the arbitration years after that. And I do think that we have seen enough from him in his time with this club to think that he is the best piece the Royals have and has shown the most of any of these guys that leads you to believe if anyone from this era, this, I don't even want to call it an era, but this period of time in Royals history, all these, frankly, failed experiments and draft picks that have not panned out, he is the one that still gives me the most hope long term. Dan and I have talked about it many times, that in terms of just his stuff, the quality of pitches, he might not have top 1 percentile velocity. It might not always be perfect placement, but based on just the stuff, compared to Singer, compared to Bubic when he's been healthy, compared to any of these other guys. I know Kowar pitched today. He's now a bullpen arm, and I mean, he is what he is. There's not really any point in relitigating Jackson Kowar over and over. But you throw in Bolin when he gets healthy, or has been progressing, getting healthy after the Tommy John. When you throw in John Heasley, all these guys, the best stuff belongs to Daniel Lynch. And when it is on, he looks as good as we've seen from a Royals pitcher in a long, long time. Last night, that changeup, cooking. It looked awesome. Now, he wasn't missing bats last night, only had 2 strikeouts, and we'll get to that issue here in a second. But if you're still getting the outs and you're only allowing 3 base runners over 7 innings, hard to get all that upset. 1 hit, 2 walks, 2 Ks, no runs allowed in 7 innings. That is a gem. That is a true gem. Fulton ran this last night and then expanded on it today. He and I were talking in the studio while the Royals game was going on. This is the first time all year, including today's game, the Royals have had 3 pitchers go back to back pitching 6 innings, which is bleak. It is also the first time all year the Royals have gone back-to-back games with a quality start. Not Brady Singer today. That was not a quality start. But Jordan Lyles on Monday, Daniel Lynch last night. There's no negative really to say about that Lynch outing, except for the fact that he wasn't missing bats. He wasn't striking guys out. You don't have to win with overpowering guys. I'm a true believer that you don't need to win that way. And my favorite teams, their second best pitcher so far this season, third, I guess. It's been a fairly decent year for the Cubs. Kyle Hendricks, he just pitched today for the Cubs. And I was so excited for baseball today because the Cubs were playing the Pirates. They've been red hot. The Royals were in action during the day. They were happening at the same time. And on one screen, the Cubs were making me feel great. And then I would look over to the Royals game, and I thought, damn, this is making me feel much worse. This is water finding its level, apparently. This is bringing my mood way back down, switching screen to screen. Or alternately, I'd look from the Royals game over to the Cubs, and suddenly I would feel much better. But that's a guy who throws 88, in fact, 87.5. He's ranked 501st in terms of fastest average fastball velocity this year, but he finds ways to win. He gets guys to hit into soft ground balls, soft liners, lazy pop flies, soft contact, and you can win that way. So you don't have to win striking out, a guy per 9 or 9 per 9, I should say, a guy per inning. That's the right way to phrase that. But I think it's fair to say you would like to see more of that out of Daniel Lynch. You would like to see him miss more bats. You'd like to see him be a little more overpowering, especially against an offense like that of the Detroit Tigers. But again, he still got the outs, still only allowed 1 hit, wasn't all over the place, 2 walks in 7 innings. You can live with that. Hard for me to be too upset about Daniel Lynch. So now through 5 outings this year, and I broke it down with very scientific terms here. He's got 1 gem. That was this game. 1 other quality start. He had an okay outing his first time out. Didn't get out of the 6th. Only gave up 2 runs, though. And he's had 2 duds. That's what he's been this year. He's got to be more consistent. And you have heard me for years now talk about how much I am begging these Royals pitchers, really anyone on the Royals, to show some level of consistency. And that is going to be key. And if we don't see that from now until the first weekend of October, we're all going to feel much worse about his long-term prospects as well. I understand that. But I do think it is fair to say, at least from my perspective, he has shown us more in terms of having starter quality stuff, having a deep enough arsenal, being able to get to this maximum version of himself. He has shown us more of that, I think, than anyone else in this rotation. And that brings us to Brady Singer. Today's line for Brady Singer, he gave you 7 innings, okay? He ate a bunch of innings. You didn't have to use a whole lot out of the bullpen. In fact, all you had to use was Jackson Kowar because we didn't get to the bottom of the 9th. Kowar, no earned runs, but I don't think anyone is going to tell you that Jackson Kowar was especially good in this game today. 4 runs allowed, although, again, none of them earned. Did give up 4 hits. Singer goes 7 innings, gives up 7 hits, 5 earned, walks 1, struck out 2 guys, gave up a home run. His ERA now sits for the year at 6.34. See, for Lynch, when he's got that good stuff, when he's got the changeup working, when he's able to go deeper into the bag and work you over because his stuff is so overpowering, the quality of his pitches, the depth of his pitching arsenal, when he can keep unleashing that at you and can keep you on your toes and doesn't give you a chance to get comfortable with any one thing he's throwing, that is when he, despite not missing a lot of bats, is able to create an advantage over you. That allows him to dominate. That allows him to put together a quality outing. Brady Singer doesn't have that. And for whatever reason, he is not willing to add to the arsenal. How many times for years now have we heard from folks on this radio station, myself included, Dan included, Fulton Caster, Jake Laban, you on the text line, you in the YouTube comments, talking about how Brady Singer's got to do something else with this pitching arsenal. He's got to be willing to throw the changeup. It can't just be fastball slider. It cannot be that. You've heard it countless times on this program or on our sister program from noon to 3. Going back to Mike Matheny's managerial days, how often did you hear Mike Matheny sometimes even get frustrated? And I gave credit to Matheny that he very rarely publicly got frustrated with his guys. It was a lot of sticking up for them. It was a lot of trying to be encouraging through the media. I, honest to God, thought that Matheny did about as well as he could have with not being hard on guys who probably needed, I don't want to say needed to be coddled, but needed to be hyped up. needed to be lifted up and put on a pedestal because, frankly, they were not pitching very well. They were not playing very well. They needed to have a little boost of confidence. I thought he did a fine job with that. But there would be times in the last couple of years when he would be legitimately frustrated that Singer wouldn't go to the changeup, that he would just stick fastball, 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 slider, fastball, 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 slider, that he would not mix it up enough. I think that we have hit a point now, and maybe you were already at this point. I think that's also fair to say. You may have already felt this way. You may have been convinced of this for even longer than myself, for even longer than the Royals. You may have been on this for forever. I am at a point, though, and I've had this only solidified with time. Brady Singer's a bullpen guy. Long term, I think if you were looking at what way will we make the most out of who Brady Singer is, when we are looking at over the span of what we hope is a long career for him, whether it's with the Kansas City Royals or elsewhere, in what role are we going to be able to maximize his skill set? In what role are we going to be able to find a way to get the most out of him and to use his tools to their most effective degree? I don't think that's as a starting pitcher. How many, and this is an honest, earnest question, how many good starting pitchers are there out there with a two-pitch arsenal? How many? Spencer Strider can do it in Atlanta, but that's because his stuff is incredible. His two-pitch arsenal is as good as anybody's anywhere in any level of baseball. Okay, it's great. And using the phrase stuff, that stuff is phenomenal. But Brady Singer's not that guy. Brady Singer doesn't have the stuff. He doesn't have the pitch quality to be able to do that. And frankly, if you doubt me, I would simply point you to Brady Singer's game log and Brady Singer's overall stats for the season. What would lead you to believe, no, actually, he does have that? The lack of consistency over the course of his career. And I feel like I'm ragging on him, and I feel like I've been tough on Brady Singer a lot during his career. But when you get taken with a top 20 pick and you are to be leaned on as the future ace, or at least a future stalwart of a rotation, the expectation is you're going to figure it out at some point. And he just really hasn't. And it's been a better month for Brady Singer. I mean, into today, obviously not a great day. He is, his last time out gave up 2 earned in 5 1/3. Not awful. They lost. He got no run support, though. Not awful. The time before that against Baltimore gave up 4 in 4 1/3. 6 hits, 3 walks. That was a bad outing. But he threw 5 2/3 scoreless in the win over Colorado all the way back on June 4th. Those are his 4 outings for the month. His ERA for the month is 3.52. That's not awful. That's not terrible. It's actually a little higher than that. That doesn't include today's outing. But still, it's under 4. I mean, you can live with that, or right around 4. You can live with that. Hell, a quality start every time out. If you threw exactly a quality start, 6 innings, 3 runs allowed, your ERA for the season would be 4.5. So you could live with an ERA for a month floundering around 4. But between the inconsistency and seeing these outings where he's just straight up bad, you just can't live with that. And again, I ask you earnestly, honestly, how many times this year has Brady Singer taken the mound and you have just said, this is bad? This isn't, man, he's really got a shove and he's fighting through some stuff, or doesn't have the command, but he's working through it. No, how many times has it just been bad? Today was bad. There's no denying today was bad. That game against Baltimore I just mentioned, 4 and 4 1/3. That was bad. The last time he faced Detroit, back on May 22nd, 5 runs, didn't get out of the 4th inning. Threw 87 pitches in 3 2/3 innings. Go back to May 6th against Oakland. 5 runs allowed in 4 innings. Threw 96 pitches in 4 innings. Didn't have command. Didn't have put away stuff. I guess he had 4 strikeouts in 4 innings, but way too many base runners. Go back to April 30th against the Twins. You want me to keep going? That was 8 earned runs in under 3 innings. He didn't get out of the 3rd in that game against the Twins. Gave up 8 runs against Atlanta, 5 against the Rangers, 5 in 6 innings against the Giants. This is who Brady Singer is. And I feel bad, and I feel like I'm ragging on him. But he's been in the league since 2020. You don't get the, he didn't have a full minor league experience, and he got called up, and 2020 was so weird, and, you give him a little leeway. We're deep into his career at this point. This is year 4. And aside from maybe a little over half a season last year, all we have is flashes. And we've barely had those this season. We had that one outing. I'm trying to remember which game it was, but he did look great. He's had a couple quality starts this year. Against Arizona on April 25th. And against the White Sox on May 11th. He had quality starts in each of those 2 games. And you thought maybe he's figuring it out. He was okay in the one start after that White Sox outing. The Royals won his next outing. In fact, that was a quality start too. He gave up 4 runs, but only 2 earned against the Padres on May 16th. But there's just no reason for me to believe that this is going to work out long-term as a starter for Brady Singer. And he might be a good bullpen option. He really might be. We've got a text in here from the 785, and appreciate you guys sending all your texts in, YouTube comments as well. We have a text here from the 785 that says, with Singer, it isn't whether he will figure it out or not. It's simply him saying it's his way or the highway. He's no more than a good bullpen guy until he decides to alter his arsenal. And that's essentially what I'm trying to get at here, is that if he is telling you, and he is, because this is what he is choosing to do, this is what he is actively doing. If he is saying, I'm a 2-pitch guy, I'm going to use the changeup, not even as a break glass in case of emergency. It's just something I'm going to throw in occasionally. And what did he throw, 4 today? You've got to use it more than that, man. Has to be more often. You can get away with that if it's your 5th pitch or your 4th pitch even. But you can't be a starter and a guy who's expected to be a front of the rotation guy who only has 2 pitches and barely wants to use the 3rd. Refuses to do so for whatever reason. And such a big reason why he turned things around a lot last year is because he started to use it more. I don't know what is wrong. I don't know why he doesn't want to do it. But that's what I would tell him. And I would say, look, Brady, you're a pen guy. I know they tried it last year. They had to send him back down to Omaha for a little bit. He came up, and he was great. He was awesome for 3 months last season. But if you're not willing to pitch like a starter, then you don't deserve that spot in the starting rotation. That's just the way it is. From the 785, listen, guys, baseball is my favorite sport. I love the Royals, but let's spend our time talking about how fun college football is going to be in the state of Kansas in a couple of months. These guys haven't been worth the airtime. Lucky for our 785 texture, we do have a bunch of college football coming up today. Top of the 4 o'clock hour, we've got some Big 12 over-under predictions that came in from Shahan Jayaraja of CBS Sports. We're going to talk about those. He's super high on K-State. High on the quality of KU football, but not on the win total, which I think is an important distinction. So we'll touch on that a little bit, plus some other thoughts on the Big 12. Fitz is going to join us, Tim Fitzgerald, for the Wildcat wrap-up. That's coming up at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour today. We've also got One Gotta Go and some NFL talk coming up this hour as we're just getting started on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk.
think I'm going to kill you. Give me $200.
Well, gotta go.
Before we get to today's One Gotta Go, Brendan Dzwierzynski and Kyle Manthe here with you, by the way. Kyle swooping in for One Gotta Go today. Wanted to get to a couple comments from YouTube. Again, our YouTube channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. From our pal Vance, he says, joke of the day, what's the difference between Brady Singer and a professional bowler? A bowler knows how to throw strikes. Or a strike, anyway. Mark also chimes in, says he thinks Brady Singer is going to be a bullpen guy. Two-pitch pitchers don't have a spot generally as starters. I'd rather him save up the energy, throw darn near 100, and use them for an inning at a time every other day. Also from Christopher on the YouTube comment section, I'm just going to pretend that they won 4-3 today because with a barely above competent defense, they would have. Maybe even 4-2. Yeah, the defense today, not good. That's a problem. That is a legit problem. But there are so many other problems offensively and pitching staff-wise and in the field. I feel like the fielding kind of takes a backseat to some of those other major issues for this team. All right, let's get to today's One Gotta Go. Kyle, I've got mine for you first here. We're going to go with major sports commissioners, okay? So we're going to do a reverse One Gotta Go here because it'd be pretty easy to pick one that's got to leave. You could pick really any of them and be a winner. So we're going to do a reverse. I'm going to give you 4 options. You have to keep one of these commissioners. You get the NFL's Roger Goodell, the NBA's Adam Silver, Major League Baseball's Rob Manfred, or the National Hockey League's Gary Bettman. You have to keep one of those commissioners. Who are you keeping?
I can't say I know enough about the NHL's commissioner and how he's doing. So I'll put him to the side. I'll keep Roger Goodell, which might be, he's really improved his image, I think, over the last 5 or so years. He was really shaky around 2013, 14, 15, but I feel like he's kind of picked it up recently and helped out his stock. Adam Silver just always seems to be kind of making the shallow PR stunts, and Rob Manfred's just terrible.
Yeah, I've got the same choice as you, although I will say, not knowing much about Gary Bettman might actually make him the best option to keep him around. But no, I think Bettman, hockey has done a good job in the last couple of years. I think their new media contracts helped a lot, that they're easier to find and actually watch it. So I guess that's a win for him. I'd keep Goodell too. It's kind of funny that, he is still, I think, disliked by a lot of people. And the commissioner's job isn't to be liked. It's to grow your league and to make a lot of money, right? But if you go back to the 2020 draft and he's doing the draft, announcing the picks from his recliner, from his big, comfy leather chair in his basement, he's wearing quarter zips and talking to guys on Zoom. I think that honestly did a lot for his image. And there's a bunch of studies out there about how politicians have done that over time. Bill Clinton playing the sax on Saturday Night Live, or, George Bush throwing out the first pitch and being a huge baseball fan. Doing things outside of the job that humanize you in these big, powerful roles. I'm not saying anything about those specific presidents for what it's worth. I'm just saying those kind of things endear you to the masses a little bit more. Adam Silver definitely does shallow PR stuff, and I think people are kind of sick of it at this point. Still living off the Donald Sterling thing. And Rob Manfred's the worst commissioner in the history of professional sports in America. So pretty easy to not pick him. So I'm with you. I would take Roger Goodell.
My one got to go for you with the NBA draft coming up tomorrow. We got kind of sports calendar moments.
Okay.
So you have to choose one that you can't get the experience, the thrill, the excitement of watching it or just consuming it in general.
Okay.
We've got the NBA draft, the NFL draft, and instead of the baseball draft, because that would obviously be the one I assume most people would cut, we'll go with baseball opening day.
Ooh. All right. Man, this is a good one. I love the NFL draft. As someone who lives and breathes both NFL and college football all year, I love the draft, how it comes together, all the, analysis and talk about it that goes on beforehand. I feel like for a lot of my life, the NBA draft would have been the easy answer. But at this point, I get so interested, at least in where our local guys end up and where specifically the KU players, where they end up. You got to keep baseball opening day because there's something about it. I would argue that baseball's opening day is the most magical day on the sports calendar. You get excited about March Madness and the first weekend of the tournament, and Conference Championship Sunday in the NFL is a big deal. Super Bowl Sunday. There's many of them. But there's nothing quite like opening day. Like, it's spring is here. Summer is coming. Hope springs eternal. Everybody has a chance. This marathon season, but for this one day, we are all equal. So I think I would take out the NBA draft, even though it's a big day for our local guys, and I like rooting for our local guys and seeing where they end up. The other two, I think, just consume so much of my brain space. I've got to keep the two of those.
I think I would have to get rid of baseball opening day, even with everything you've said about it. Maybe it's because I'm not as big of a baseball fan, or maybe it's because the Royals have always sucked. And so that hope and optimism that's supposed to be built in isn't there. I certainly feel that in like week one for NFL. I definitely feel that with the Chiefs all the time. That feels more special than MLB opening day. It's also just because I know there's 161 more of these that are roughly going to be the same. So I know that there's a lot more chances to see them down the road, as opposed to the other events that are like 1 or 3 days. It's just a little bit more exciting for me.
We've got a texture here from the 785 who says opening day is the first day of spring. You can't get rid of it. No, I feel you. Spring is here. The weather is getting better. I love a good sunny opening day that feels good. Although there is an interesting point when it comes to teams that are truly terrible, that opening day could, if you just love baseball, I think it still has that magic. But if you are, like, I love the Royals, but that's really all I pay attention to. Like, I'm not calling Jake out for any means. Jake's a Royals fan, and he likes baseball. But Jake's not like, Dan or Fulton or myself, where we're like perusing fan graphs in the morning, or like watching tons of national games when they're on TV. Or alternately, like Dan and I have favorite teams that play in different markets than where we live that we don't cover. So we're watching more teams anyway. I can understand why opening day might not feel the same for you, because oh my God, we have 162 of these. We are going to lose 100 of them, and I'm going to feel miserable for the majority of the season. I can understand if that's you, why opening day might not feel the same. But I just feel like there's something sacred about it. It's one of the few things in baseball that still makes it feel like the national pastime. Like, so much of it has been changed. So much of it has been ripped up and torn up by the current commissioner and regime, among others. It's not just him. Seelig was part of that too. But to just feel like, wow, it's here. Baseball is here. Summertime in America is here. There's still something special about that, so I think I would have to keep it. We will talk, by the way, speaking of the NBA draft, plenty of that coming up on tomorrow's show. Where's Grady Dick going to go? What about Jalen Wilson? What about Keontae Johnson? Will Marquise Noel get drafted? All that is coming up on tomorrow's show. And we'll talk a little Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel next hour with Tim Fitzgerald as well. Right now, though, we're going to wrap up today's edition of One Gotta Go. We'll take a break. When we come on back, the NFL. Some notes on Chris Jones. We're going to move that up a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about Chris Jones, what Joel Corey had to say about him. Additionally, we talked about this with Matt Verderam yesterday, but Dalvin Cook wants to form essentially a mini super team, a dynamic duo along with DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah, best of luck with that. We'll talk about it next on 580 Sports Talk. 344 on 580 Sports Talk. Just getting things started on this Wednesday edition of the show. Thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with us today. Dan's still out on vacation. He'll be back tomorrow. Brendan Dzwierzynski will here with you. Kyle Manthe in the control room today as well, running the board for the program. I had a question from Vance in the YouTube comments. Says, is there an NBA version of UDFAs? I don't follow, so I was just curious. Yes, there are indeed undrafted free agents in the NBA draft. In fact, just a few years ago, Devon Dotson was an undrafted free agent. He was, I think, the first free agent signed when the draft ended back in, that would have been 2020, when he was picked up by the Chicago Bulls, his hometown team, or his original hometown team. Lived in Charlotte for a while. Beside the point, that doesn't really matter. So, yes, that is a thing. It's kind of funny how the NBA has, like, the halfway point between baseball's developmental system and the NFL just using college football as its developmental system, but not having a farm team. The NFL's got the practice squad, but we got Major League Baseball with this deep, expansive, not as much anymore, but this deep and expansive farm system set up. And the NBA, you can sign guys to two-way contracts, or you sign them and have them go to summer league, or, work out during summer camp or whatever. Some guys get two-way contracts, etc. So, yes, some guys will get picked up. Marquise Noel's going to be signed by someone tomorrow night. I'm certain of that. It's just a matter of, will he get drafted, or is he going to end up having to sign as a free agent, go through the summer league process, and go from there. So he'll end up with someone. By the end of tomorrow night or in the early morning hours of Friday, Marquise Noel's going to have a team. It's just a matter of how is he going to get to said team. And again, we'll talk more about that coming up with Tim Fitzgerald later today, and for all of our local guys coming up tomorrow to preview the NBA draft. Short show tomorrow, by the way. We are done tomorrow at 5 o'clock for Royals baseball. Joel Corey, friend of the program, analyst for CBS Sports, former NFL agent, has a story up at CBSSports.com about Chris Jones and the agent's take on what the Chiefs and Jones can do to get an extension done this offseason and get him set up for the long term. And the highlights of this, I'd recommend you go check it out. It's very thorough. It's long. It's well done. Joel does an incredible job, and really is the only guy in the mainstream sports media world who does something like this. And it's really well done. So he says this: a Jones deal shouldn't be less than the midpoint of Aaron Donald, and the second highest paid interior defensive lineman. That would be right around $27.5 million a year, with Quinnen Williams being unable to beat Jeffrey Simmons, $23.5 million per year. At this salary level, the overall salary guarantees should be in the $70 million neighborhood, with around $55 million fully guaranteed at signing based on Simmons and Lawrence's deals, that being Dexter Lawrence. Jones insisting on joining Donald as $30 million per year interior defensive lineman wouldn't be unreasonable. Now, Joel Corey, being a former player agent, obviously is going to side with the player's side of a lot of these negotiations, but I tend to agree with him. I don't know if Chris Jones is going to get all the way to $30 million on his next deal, on this extension that is coming down the pipe at some point. I don't know that he will get there, but I do think it is reasonable. Donald makes a little bit more than that. I believe it's about $31.7 million a year for Aaron Donald, which is crazy for an interior lineman, but he's one of the best defense players of all time. He deserves it. Jones was better than Donald last year. Jones is younger than Aaron Donald. Chris Jones right now is at worst the second best interior defensive lineman in the NFL. He's older than Quinnen Williams. He's older than Dexter Lawrence. He's closer to 30. I get all of those things. But Jones is better than Quinnen Williams. Chris Jones is better than Dexter Lawrence. Chris Jones is better than Jeffrey Simmons. And those guys are good players. But Chris Jones is better than all of them. So if he's saying, hey, I want at least 27 and a half, maybe that's where the team starts. If Jones is looking for 30 and the team is looking for, hey, look, we will beat the Quinnen Williams number, whatever that ends up being. We're going to get you 27.5. I think the Chiefs can come to a very understandable midpoint there and figure it out and get it done easily before training camp. I do think that's going to happen. If Chris Jones' stance and his agency's stance is, no, we want more than Donald, that's probably where you're going to end up in a little more of a hairy situation, unless you can get it back down to $29.5, $30 million per year. Again, I think Jones is worth it. The Chiefs can make the cap work. The Chiefs have good accountants. That's what you need to make the cap work. You need good accountants. Actually pay the guy, you need to have cash on hand. The Chiefs are not struggling to have cash on hand. Don't worry about that. As long as they're winning, as long as they are the franchise in the NFL, and that's what they are right now, do not worry about that. They're going to be able to pay whatever they want. All you need is good accounting to make it work under the salary cap. I do think the Chiefs are going to be just fine in that regard. I should point out, though, Corey says that Chris Jones made a mistake leverage-wise when he tweeted out that he doesn't want to play for any other franchise. He wants to be a Chief for life. And he says, I would advise my clients to never say something like that because you lose leverage. And I would advise him to either add a caveat to that, add some sort of qualifier, or just straight up retract the statement. So I think it was very interesting. And again, this is over at cbssports.com if you want to read the whole thing. It's very thorough. It's got all sorts of really good information and kind of a look behind the curtain into how these negotiations work and what Chris Jones and his agency might be doing in terms of their argument with the Kansas City Chiefs for more money. I think it's really fascinating. And again, it'll get done. Right now, I am sitting at 98% sure this is going to get done with Chris Jones, which is a pretty good spot to be in. I would not worry if I was a Chiefs fan about Chris Jones. I did want to mention this as well. We talked about it with Matt Verderam a little bit yesterday during our weekly NFL conversation with the staff writer for Sports Illustrated's NFL department. Dalvin Cook was on a podcast with Adam Schefter of ESPN this weekend and said that he would like to team up with DeAndre Hopkins, the two most high-profile free agents in the NFL this year. He said it would be epic for the league. People still saying epic. I didn't know that we were still using it in that regard. That was really big in like 2012, probably, like describing things as epic all the time. I didn't know we were still doing that. Apparently Dalvin Cook is. First of all, if this is actually something that these two parties both want to do, if DeAndre Hopkins also feels this way and would like to pair up with Dalvin Cook, that's just another reason why it's never going to work with DeAndre Hopkins coming to Kansas City. The Chiefs, I guarantee you, are not interested in adding Dalvin Cook. Absolutely 1,000,000% guarantee you they would have no interest in that. And I frankly still, as I've told you before, don't believe the Chiefs have any interest in DeAndre Hopkins. And frankly, why would they? He's not the kind of player they like to target. He's not in the age range they generally like to target. They've got a very tight cap situation right now, but extending Chris Jones is going to open up about $10 million of that. Corey writes that in his piece, by the way. They're fine cap wise, but I think they'd be wiser to either save that for possibly a mid-season acquisition. Maybe you end up going back after Carlos Dunlap. Maybe you want to do something else with that money. You want to just have it open for the middle of the season in case you need to sign someone, or you have it roll over to next year. Fine, so be it. DeAndre Hopkins doesn't make sense there. And to be frank with you, I don't really think this would make sense for anyone. When is the last time an NFL team was either a running back or a wide receiver away from contending for or winning a championship? And that's not to say that it's not important to have good wide receivers. In fact, I think wide receiver has really climbed up the ladder in terms of most valuable positions in the NFL. It's obviously quarterback number one with a bullet. You've got stud offensive tackle. You've got pass rusher. You've got shutdown corner. I think wide receiver is very quickly getting up into that echelon of those most valuable positions, a true X number one reliable receiver. But I don't think you point to any recent champion and you say, oh yeah, that one receiver or one running back made the difference. Isaiah Pacheco was really big for the Chiefs last year. Adding him wasn't the difference maker in the Chiefs winning or losing the Super Bowl. I think that should be pretty clear. Wide receiver, the Chiefs proved they didn't. All that narrative last season, all of that nonsense, garbage narrative about, the Chiefs are going to be back because they don't have Tyreek Hill. Oh, they were all about Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill wasn't even the most important pass catcher on the team, okay? And I know the Chiefs are different because they've got Patrick Mahomes. They've got Andy Reid. They've got Travis Kelce. I get that. But I don't know exactly who would be interested in both of these free agents, let alone both of them together. Like, I think there are some interesting fits for DeAndre Hopkins. We talked about it with Matt. I think New England makes some sense. I said the other day, it might have even been last week, I think Indianapolis would make a lot of sense for DeAndre Hopkins. There are teams that he would fit with. And I think there are some teams that would be interested in Dalvin Cook as well. But when you factor in that a contending team is not going to pay both of those contracts, when you factor in that no contending team is one Dalvin Cook or one DeAndre Hopkins away from being a Super Bowl contender, and when you factor in also that super teams just don't really work in the NFL, I can't imagine any team is going to be willing to do that. The most available cap space right now is the Chicago Bears. If the Bears want to go sign these two dudes, more power to you. Maybe you guys just need more talent so badly you would go do this and sign both these dudes to 1 year or 2 year contracts. But I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense. And it's why, and we're going to get to a point, if these guys do end up commanding a lot of money or command, Odell Beckham-like contracts where we got $15 million for 1 year, why good teams stay good, competitive teams stay competitive, and why bad teams stay bad. It's about leadership. It's about the front office. The Chiefs aren't going to mess around with something like this. Some other team that's not well run, like the Chicago Bears, or like the two teams that just cut these guys, the Minnesota Vikings and the Arizona Cardinals, that's the kind of move those kind of teams might make. We've got to take a break. The national and local news is coming up next. To lead off the 4 o'clock hour, though, we'll talk a little Big 12 football, some season win and loss total projections. That's up next on 580 Sports Talk. go. Happy 4 o'clock hour on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dzwierzynski. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today on the program. Kyle Manthe with us in the booth as well. He'll be back for What Is Wrong With You coming up here in just a little bit. Dan Lucero will be back tomorrow. He's still finishing up his vacation down south in parts unknown. I don't really need to say parts unknown, I don't think. He's been posting on Twitter where he is. So I think it's fair to say that he's in Florida. But he's been enjoying a tropical vacation, he and his wife. He'll be back on the show with us coming up tomorrow. Appreciate you for being a part of the show, as always, whether you're listening on 580 AM, 104.9 FM, online at 580WIBW.com, or on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of the channel there, and where you can watch the show. Camera running, rolling with us all the way through 6 o'clock today. It's also the first day of summer, pointed out to us on the YouTube comments. I think I had learned that earlier today, that the 21st. Is it always the 21st? Sometimes it's the 22nd. I know the equinoxes and the solstices, they change a little bit from year to year. I think sometimes it's the 21st, sometimes it's 22nd. Maybe one of the equinoxes is always the same date. The solstices are always the same date. I'm not entirely sure. I do know it's the longest day of the year. It is the first official day of summer. So happy start of summer. Happy summer solstice to you. For those of you who think that means good things for the crops or the harvest, well, I hope it does indeed bring you good fortune for this year. Coming up here in this 4 o'clock hour of the program today, we've got some Big 12 football to talk about here in just a minute. Some wins and loss totals predictions for the Big 12 this year. We've also got today's What Is Wrong With You, brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. Yesterday, the Petty Pennies were our winner. Kyle's story of an auto shop owner who was screwing over his employees and had to pay one of his employees $915 in unpaid overtime. He gave him 91,500 pennies covered in oil and dumped them on his driveway. By the way, that guy owed over $40,000 in other unpaid wages, too. Real dirtbag. So we've got two stories going head-to-head in What Is Wrong With You today to try to take down our champion. And we've got Tim Fitzgerald coming up this hour for today's Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline. If you've got any questions for Fitz, let us know, either on the text line or in the YouTube comment section. That text line number, you know it, 785-272-9429. By the way, and okay, yes, clarified here in the YouTube comments, summer solstice always between the 20th and 22nd. That's what I thought. Generally, it was the 21st, but it's somewhere in this 3-day window. That's what I thought. I have a story coming up at the 5 o'clock hour. I forgot to tease this a little bit earlier. Had to move things around to make sure we get this in. A story from Stephen F. Austin's bowling team. I know what you're thinking. If you have not already heard or read this story, you might be thinking, Brendan, you've got to be kidding me. I know the Royals are bad. I know it's late June. There's got to be more to talk about. When I tell you this is one of the more wild sports stories I have heard in a bit, with one of the greatest sports headlines of all time, I am serious. A story involving an affair, the head coach, an assistant coach, and a really fed-up husband. That story is coming up in the 5 o'clock hour today. Very excited to share it with you. I could not believe it when I read it last night. But before we get there, I wanted to get to this from Shahan Jayaraja over at CBS Sports. We've had Shahan on the show a couple of times. We'll get him on again before the Big 12 season starts. He took the Vegas over-under totals from Caesars Sportsbook, in fact, for all 14 teams in the Big 12 this year. And he predicted every game. He didn't write out a prediction for every game, but he went through and predicted every single conference game and then came up with his pick over under the win total for every single team in the conference. And we'll start with our local teams. We'll start with K-State and KU, and we'll start in that order as well. Because he is a little more bullish on K-State than I am. And I would like to make a caveat immediately when I say that. I think Kansas State is going to be very good this year. I think K-State football is in for another very good year in 2023. Now, I think it is going to be hard to replace some of the players that have been lost to graduation or to the NFL, or both. On the defensive end, I think it's going to be really hard to replace Julius Brents, who I know wasn't in Manhattan for all that long. He wasn't with the program for all that long. He was really freaking good when he was with the program, though. Really freaking good. It's going to be hard to replace Josh Hayes, who is really good for this team. It is going to be hard to replace Deuce Vaughn. This among other guys, okay? Malik Knowles, established part of this team for a long time. All these guys who were drafted, and got to go play for their hometown teams. Oh, yeah, by the way, let's not forget about the 31st overall pick, a first-rounder, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who's now a Kansas City Chief, right? A lot of talent was lost from last year's team. Now, the positive side here, you have a lot that's coming back. Look defensively first. Look at Deuce Green back for one more year. Look at Khalid Duke. Look at Kobe Savage. All these talented players, Brendan Mott, all these guys who are coming back who either played major roles or were among the biggest contributors on the defense last year, they're going to be back. I know Fitz has told us he's concerned about the interior of the defensive line. I think that's fair enough. I've got some worries about the cornerback room. I'm intrigued by the cornerback room, absolutely intrigued by it. I said to Dan either last week or the week before, one of the players I'm most excited to watch for this entire K-State roster is Keenan Garber, the Lawrence Free State product, who started as a wide receiver, really didn't play much for several years, has flipped to defensive back, and came up with a huge play in the Big 12 championship game. I'm extremely excited to see what he can do as a full-time contributor in that role. So I think there's reason to think optimistically. I just think there are going to be some growing pains there. Offensively, you've got a couple of transfer wide receivers in, Power 5 transfer wide receivers in. You've got Treshaun Ward, the running back transfer from Florida State, who, as I've alluded to before, a lot of people around college football really like Treshaun Ward and really like what he can offer to this running back room. Plus, I don't want to gloss over DJ Giddens, another semi-local player, Junction City product, who I think is going to be, with a bigger role, a very nice player for this team. I don't think it's quite the thunder and lightning 1-2 punch that Deuce Vaughn and DJ Giddens was, but Ward is a very good player in his own right. Giddens, with another year and a bigger role, should be an even bigger impact kind of player. So I think there's a lot to like about the running back room. You've got maybe the best tight end in the Big 12 in Ben Sinnott, and you've got Will Howard. And so much of K-State's success this year is going to come down to what is the real Will Howard? Who is the real Will Howard? He's going to get a lot of love for Big 12 offensive preseason player of the year. He's going to get a lot of preseason love to be the all Big 12 first team quarterback. And again, we'll get to Shahan's picks here in a second. Shahan Jayaraja put together a quick list on Twitter last night. He was ranking the tiers of Big 12 quarterbacks. His number one tier of Big 12 quarterbacks was 3 players deep. It was Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Daniels. That's a really good group. And I would put Daniels above Ewers too. I don't know if that was in order for Shahan, but I would put Daniels ahead of Ewers. And he's got Will Howard right there at the top. And he said he's probably going to lean with Will Howard as his pick for first-team all-conference quarterback, first-team player of the year. Preseason, anyway, with Will Howard. Will was awesome when he was called in to replace Adrian Martinez last year. And if you want to call me a hater for this opinion I'm about to share, I can understand it, but I really do. Well, one, I don't hate Kansas State, so I would hope you wouldn't say that about me. I hope I have earned that benefit of the doubt. But I don't say this because I'm hating on the guy. I'm just saying it because I'm taking the conservative approach here. The first 2 seasons that Will Howard was on campus, he was not good. It wasn't that he was a letdown or a disappointment. He was just straight up not good when he came in to replace Skylar Thompson. And he had to do it for varying amounts of time. This season, he gets called in when Adrian Martinez goes down. I was out at a housewarming party for a couple of friends who are, by the way, gigantic K-State fans. Adrian Martinez goes down, and I thought, yeah, that's over. This season is cooked for K-State. Will Howard comes in, and he not only was he better than Martinez, he had an argument that he was maybe the best quarterback in the league last year. He didn't play the full season, so he's not going to get that kind of nod at the end of the year. But, I mean, Dylan Gabriel was your first-team all-league quarterback. I know Jalen Daniels got hurt, too, and he missed time, so he wasn't going to get that nod, but Will Howard was just as good, if not better, than Gabriel. At his best, I think Howard was definitely better than Gabriel. And again, I think both Kansas quarterbacks were. Is that who Will Howard really is? For a full season, week 1 all the way through week 13, maybe into the conference championship game, is Will Howard that guy? Is he the guy we saw this past year, the most recent sample, the most successful sample for sure? Or is he more so the guy we saw in his first 2 seasons where he looked scared to throw the ball in tight windows, where he wasn't especially accurate, was okay with his legs, but didn't love to run? What is the real Will Howard? And if the answer to that is, well, Brendan, it's the guy we saw for the majority of last season. It's the guy who was throwing with confidence, the guy who was making NFL throws left sideline, right hash, deep ball, intermediate game, short game, that could make all those throws and was throwing with confidence. And maybe all it took was some confidence. Maybe that is all that he needed to step into that spot. And if that's the case, K-State should win 10 games. That's what Shahan has them at CBS Sports. He had K-State, whose over-under win-loss total for the year is 8. He has them only losing at Texas Tech and at Texas. He's got them going 10-2 for the regular season. This is what he writes about this group. Last season, Kansas State was arguably the most undervalued team in the nation by Vegas. Oddsmakers set the bar at a bowl game, but the Wildcats instead earned their first outright Big 12 title since 2003 after shocking TCU. Several key playmakers are gone, but quarterback Will Howard, a talented running back room, and an offensive line group filled with returners gives the Wildcats a higher floor than most. Getting all of TCU, Baylor, UCF, and Iowa State at home doesn't hurt. So he's got K-State winning all those. He's got K-State going undefeated at home. That would include those games he just mentioned. Also, a road win over Missouri. A road win in the Sunflower Showdown. A road Friday night win over Oklahoma State. And then winning over Troy and SEMO to open the year, too. Just losses at Texas Tech and at Texas. I would say my prediction for the year going into this is K-State at 9 wins. I do not think this is a bad team. I don't think this is going to be a disappointment. I mean, even 8 wins is a good year. You go 8-4. That's a great year. I think K-State's got a shot to play for a Big 12 title again. I definitely do. I think if Will Howard is as good as he looked last year, they are going to get to 10 wins. I just am not entirely sure with the pieces that they did lose, because it's easy to say next man up, and it's easy to have confidence in your guys, but you lose that many draft picks, it is hard to overcome that, even with the talent you bring back. We also have a comment here on YouTube from Vance that says, I think Cooper Beebe is going to have a lot to say about this. Yeah, that's entirely true, too, and I glossed over the offensive line. This might be a top 3 offensive line in the country. Oklahoma's going to be great. They just always are. K-State's going to have one of, if not the best offensive lines in the entire country. That's going to play a major role in this, too. Protecting the quarterback, opening holes in the run game, that is obviously going to be huge. So I would be a little bit more bearish on Kansas State than our pal Shahan is. But 9-10 wins, I think absolutely in the cards, based on what we know about this team right now before we get to fall camp. For KU, the over-under is 6 wins for the season. Again, that's from Caesar Sportsbook. This is what Jay Araja writes. He says, the Jayhawks will be an improved football team in 2023, but it's hard to imagine, or it's hard to tell, whether that will translate into more wins after a magical 6-win campaign. The home schedule comes with major tests: Oklahoma, Texas Tech, and Kansas State. The road schedule is no cakewalk either. Adding a likely loss against Illinois in the non-conference slate makes the job even tougher. Kansas is capable of stealing a game or two, but exceeding 6 wins feels like a Herculean task with this schedule. I agree that the schedule's tough, but I actually think that some of this is not maybe a humongous detractor from what KU can be this year. I think I'm going to set my number at 7. I've talked a lot in the last couple of weeks as we've started to gear up for college football a little bit more that I think a bowl game should be the expectation, not even the goal. Like, the goal is we want to achieve this. We think we can be an 8-win team. We think we can finish the year with a winning record. So 7 regular season wins would get you there. The bowl game should be an expectation at this point, I think. And I do believe that. I do think this team can get to 7 wins. Like, I look at the point here. The home schedule comes with major tests. Oklahoma, Texas Tech, Kansas State. Yes, those are major tests. Oklahoma is Oklahoma. Texas Tech, I think, is going to be nasty. Kansas State, I just told you, I think is going to be a 9 or a 10 win team. But I'd rather have those games at home than on the road. Granted, I would rather not have to play Oklahoma and have gotten West Virginia instead. KU doesn't play West Virginia this year. But that being said, I'd rather play that game in Lawrence than play it in Norman. I'd rather play Texas Tech in Lawrence than play the Red Raiders in Lubbock. K-State has owned the rivalry for over a decade now, but I'd still rather play K-State if I'm Kansas in Lawrence than in Manhattan. So I think that benefits the Jayhawks there. And I also don't know that I agree that Illinois is a likely loss. I think Illinois' matchup against KU favors Illinois because Illinois wants to run the ball. They want to play big, beefy man ball. And KU's defensive line worries me. KU's defensive line worries me a lot going into this year because I don't think the Jayhawks are going to have that top-tier, top-end talent on the defensive front. I really like KU's linebacker core, though. And you know what I really like? I like KU's offense. And I see an Illinois defense that lost Sidney Brown. I see an Illinois defense that lost Devin Witherspoon. And I know they've got other good, talented defensive backs. That's a really well-coached defense. That's a really talented roster. But KU, I think, is going to have one of the better offenses in the country. One of the better offenses, certainly in the Big 12. So I would lean over here. I think it's an interesting point that he says he's got KU as a better team, an improved team, but harder to tell whether that will translate into more wins. I know a lot of people like to talk about how bad the KU non-conference schedule was last year. You whoop on Tennessee Tech, a bad FCS team. You got Houston, which was obviously having a down year. Okay, I understand that, but Duke wasn't a pushover. Duke won 9 games. Duke was really good. And that was a great win for KU. Got that game at home. An Illinois game is going to be at home. So I'm going to stick with 7 wins for KU. So I'm maybe slightly less optimistic about K-State. I still think they're a 9-win team. I still would give them the over for their win total. And I'm definitely more optimistic about where KU is. I would have them going over 6. I know Shahan has them going under 6. The other things that stand out to me from Shahan Jayaraja's over-under picks for the Big 12. A couple of the newcomers he's got going under in their win totals. In fact, let's get to all of the newcomers, shall we? He's got Houston, who we'll talk about more here in a moment. He's got them going over 5 wins. He's got them beating UTSA at home. That's interesting to me. UTSA's becoming a really nice program. They've got Frank Harris, who's about to be 34 years old, playing quarterback for them. They get West Virginia. They're playing Sam Houston and Rice this year. I think Oklahoma State is in for a down year. And he's got them beating Texas, too. That one surprised me a little bit. Losses to TCU, K-State, Baylor, Cincy, UCF, Texas Tech. I would be surprised if Houston got to 6 wins, to be honest with you. I would find that one a little bit harder to believe. So I would say Houston goes under there. The other newcomers, though, how about Cincinnati, who just 2 seasons ago played in the college football playoff, but they lost their head coach. They're going to have a new quarterback this year. I, frankly, don't think Scott Satterfield is all that great of a head coach, and I'm kind of amazed that that's who Cincinnati hired. I guess when you can hire away a Power 5 coach to a now Power 5 job, but previously G5 job, I guess that's a win, but I don't know. I just don't think Satterfield's all that great at the job. It hasn't been all that great in that region. He's got Cincinnati going under 5.5 wins, and I'm with him. I think it's going to be a tough year for Cincinnati because of all those reasons. It's a year of a lot of change. It's going to be a tougher schedule, new quarterback, middling coach, in my opinion. I would not be surprised if Cincinnati struggles in year 1. BYU, he's also got going under 5.5 wins. In fact, Shahan only picks them to win 4 games this year. They've got to make a change at quarterback. Now, granted, Keaton Slovis has been around for a while. Keaton Slovis was at USC, then he was at Pitt, now he's at BYU. They've had to make a lot of changes. I like Kalani Sitake as a coach. I don't know that they will go over, but I don't think they're only going to win 4 games. I think BYU is going to win a few games here. Like, he's got them losing at West Virginia. I think BYU is better than West Virginia. I think West Virginia is going to be terrible, to be quite frank with you, this year. So I don't know if I'd go over or under 5.5, but I like BYU a little bit more than Shahan does. The other team on the list, the other newcomer here, Central Florida, UCF. I'm sorry. Sorry, Knights fans. I know you don't like to be Central Florida. You are UCF. My apologies. It's like the TCU thing. They're not Texas Christian. They're TCU. He's got UCF over 7 wins. He's got them going 8-4 this year. They are the most fascinating team of the newcomers to me. I would rank it UCF, Cincy, BYU, Houston as the most intriguing teams to me among the newcomers this year. UCF has a good coach in Gus Malzahn. They've got a good athlete at quarterback in John Reese Plumlee, but can John Reese Plumlee play and compete against a Big 12 schedule with these pieces around him? I don't know. I don't know that he can. So I'm curious about what UCF is going to look like as they factor in. They've got a tough schedule. They have to go at K-State. I think going to KU is going to be tough for them, at Oklahoma, at Texas Tech. They have a road game at Boise State in the non-con. That's going to be tough for UCF. I think they are by far the most intriguing, at least schedule-wise and expectations-wise, of any of the newcomers into the Big 12 this year. Also, I told you we were going to talk more about Houston. The 2 hottest hot seats of any coaches in the league, Houston and West Virginia, I think. Houston, we've already talked about them a little bit. I don't know that they're going to get to 6 wins because I don't know that they're going to be that good, and they lost a bunch of their own talent. They lost maybe their best receiver in Tank Dell. They lost their veteran starting quarterback in Clayton Tune. They've got a head coach in Dana Holgerson, who I'm not entirely sure is still in it, and I'm not entirely sure has his whole heart still in this coaching game with Houston. I don't know that they're going to get to 5. And if they go bowl-less in year 1, kind of think that's going to be it for Dana. Transition year, get him into the Big 12. Okay, we've got money. We're in the Big 12 now. We're a P5 program. Let's go get a better head coach. The other one here is West Virginia. I've told you about 4 times already how bad I think they're going to be this year. The projected wins from Shahan Jayaraja has West Virginia beating Duquesne, BYU, Cincinnati. They've got a really hard non-conference. They have to go at Penn State, and they've got the backyard brawl against Pittsburgh. West Virginia, their win total is 5.5. I am solidly in the under camp with West Virginia, and honestly, I would not be shocked if Neil Brown doesn't make it through the season. If he got fired week 9 to get a jump on the next hiring cycle, I would not be shocked at all. And that sucks if you're West Virginia, because that means you're going to have to make a basketball hire and a football hire all within the span of a few months. Would not want to be Ren Baker in that situation. Speaking of the West Virginia coaching search in basketball, we'll get Tim Fitzgerald's thoughts on that a little bit later on, plus thoughts on all things Kansas State Wildcats. Right now, though, we have to take a commercial break. We'll come back. We've got today's What Is Wrong With You up next on 580 Sports Talk. for What Is Wrong With You on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk, brought to you by Top City Metal Supply, who always cuts the metal you need to your specifications to save your time, your money, and your material. Never settle when it comes to metal at Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. Our winner for the week from yesterday, the Petty Pennies, the business owner. He's an auto shop owner who doesn't love to pay his employees. And when one of them told him, hey, you owe me $915 in unpaid overtime, the guy brought 91,000 plus pennies to the gentleman's driveway, covered in oil, and dumped them all over the driveway, along with a pay stub that had an expletive written on it. By the way, he also owes $40,000 in other unpaid wages. Real dirtbag there. My story for today is going to take us to Florida, where if you're going to commit fraud, if you're going to commit a scheme, you might as well do a good job to cover it up. At least that would be my belief. You shouldn't just willy-nilly half-ass your scheme. I'm sorry, I said Florida. We're going to Tennessee. This feels like a Florida story, but it's actually a Tennessee story. A doctor in Tennessee has lost his medical license, Kyle, after a local news investigation revealed that he was selling bogus COVID-19 vaccination waivers to essentially anyone. That includes patients he never met, patients in far-flung states, and even a black Labrador retriever named Charlie. In a consent order signed back on May 16th, the Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners determined that Robert Coble had violated state statutes on the grounds of unprofessional, dishonorable, or unethical conduct and making false statements or representations, being guilty of fraud or deceit in the practice of medicine. He voluntarily surrendered his medical license effective that day, which is equivalent to having it revoked. He also cannot reapply for a license for at least a year, has to pay between $1,000 and $2,000 in a fine. A news channel, Channel 5 in Nashville, reported that Coble sold COVID-19 vaccine waivers through a Hendersonville, Tennessee-based company called MedChoice LLC. A website for the now dissolved company offered handwritten medical waivers personally reviewed and signed by a licensed physician. That's not really how that works. An applicant needed to pay $139 and check off a reason for needing a waiver from the list. Things such as, I have a fear of needles. I am very anxious about the vaccine. I am immunosuppressed, or I have an autoimmune disease. All he had to do was just write him a check or fill out his credit card info, and he would send this anywhere in the country. No proof needed, no location needed. He even got one for a dog, man. That's not how this is supposed to work. So, whatever your thoughts are about restrictions and waivers, to me is immaterial here. What is material is this guy committed fraud and really wasn't all that secretive about it. You'd think you'd keep it more under wraps, and you'd think you'd, try a little bit harder. So that is our doctor, Robert Coble. Well, our former doctor, I should say, from Tennessee.
I just really wish that the dog had a name like Shaggy or something. I wish it wasn't like Charlie, and that it was obviously an attempt to we're going to use a human name and try to pass this off as a human, probably.
Yeah, right.
I wish it was more obvious and even more overt that he was just being a piece of scum.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, Shaggy. Is this from Scooby-Doo? Well, sort of. You're onto something here.
He's definitely, yeah.
What's your story for today, Kyle?
My story, apparently there's not much to do over in Sioux Falls because two teenagers, one 18-year-old and 19-year-old, and a juvenile, were arrested after stealing a Velociraptor statue from a local science exhibit museum kind of thing there. They stole it. Security guard kind of saw them walking away. They used surveillance footage, tracked them back to an apartment. Police walked into the apartment. They just saw the statue just chilling in there, and now they are arrested for stealing the statue.
So they stole this with security around? Just in broad daylight?
Yeah, and then I'm just confused with what was their plan, because they just took it back to the apartment. There was no damage to it. It was just chilling in their apartment when the police showed up and found it.
And they just left it there. They didn't hide it at all. They just left it chilling.
The direct quote is, when opening the door, detectives could clearly see the Velociraptor was sitting right inside.
Yeah, man, you got to be bored out of your mind. To do that in broad daylight, even, when security's just lingering around. Man, that's bad. All right, who's your vote for today?
For today, I've got to give it to the dirty doctor.
The dirty doctor. Yeah, man. Like, again, if you're going to commit fraud, commit to it. You know me. I want the people around me to work as hard as I work. I want the people around me who are committing fraud to commit to committing fraud. I don't want you half-assing it. I don't want you writing these for dogs or making your website super obvious and not doing anything low-key. No, commit to it if you're going to do it. I'm with you on the dirty doctor for today, but a lot of alliteration here. Does the dirty doctor beat the petty pennies? I'm going to go with no here. This dude found 91,000 pennies. Where do you get that many pennies? Also, just pay your workers. Pay them what you owe them, or don't have them work overtime. And then don't pay them because they don't get that. So easily avoidable. So that's going to get my vote for today to retain as champion.
I'm right with you. And the $40,000 on top of it, maybe a more severe fine than what the doctor got coming to him.
Yeah. What an idiot. What an idiot. That is, once again, our winner, the Penny Petties. That advances once again in What Is Wrong With You. Brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. Metal cut to order when you need it. That's Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard. Let's get to a timeout. Tim Fitzgerald will hop on next on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline here on 580 Sports Talk.
I'm not a big fan of sticking. What a great day to be a Wildcat.
It's a big Kansas State victory.
Bottom of the 4 o'clock hour on a Wednesday afternoon. That means it's time to welcome Tim Fitzgerald to the show on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. He joins us for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz is the publisher of GoPowerCat.com. Go check out the website for all the best coverage of all things K-State. You can also find Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. Fitz, just you and me today. No Dan Lucero, so we can go really buck wild for the next few minutes here, okay?
Where's he at?
He is currently enjoying, well, I don't know if he's currently. He might be on a plane right now. He has been enjoying the warm weather of the Sunshine State, Florida, for the past week.
Oh, my gosh. I wonder if he wore a Speedo. I wonder if there's photos.
Fitz, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little mad you put that image in my mind. I have not thought about that, and I wish that I hadn't.
Yeah. All I can see now is cottage cheese. But anyhow, go ahead with the show.
Wow. All right. Well, we'll try to rebound from that. I will ask Dan tomorrow. When he gets back into the studio tomorrow, I will have to ask him about his bathing wear of choice. I wanted to start, though, Fitz, with the Life of Fitz podcast. The new episode just came out. You can find the link to it right on the homepage of GoPowerCat.com, wherever you get your podcasts. You have been just ripping through all of the most popular people in Manhattan, Kansas, I think, from Chris Kleiman to Bill Snyder and now head coach Jerome Tang. What was your conversation with Coach Tang like, Fitz?
It was good. I just really enjoy him quite a bit. But trying to get him nailed down for any time period and stop moving is almost impossible. So if you listen to it, he's in his office, he's in his car, he's at the barber, he's everywhere while talking to me. But it was really good. He's just such a enjoyable man that puts off good energy all the time. I think that's reflected in the podcast. I kind of feel sorry for whomever I get for my fourth week. I mean, that's a heck of a trio to follow. Yeah, it's going to be hard to find someone to measure up, but I'm good at disappointing people. So we'll just see what comes.
That energy you talk about, don't put yourself down, Fitz. Come on. We know you better than that. Don't put yourself down there. You're not going to sneak that one by me. You talk about the energy, though, and I remember, I had seen him speak before this last year, but I remember the KU K-State game at Allen Fieldhouse. I'm sitting there in the media room, and the visiting coach comes in first to talk after the game, and K-State had gotten beaten in that one. They lost to KU, and I was sitting there, and I thought, man, even in a loss, like there's just something that makes you gravitate toward this person. That it's always head held high. It's always look at the positives and look at what we can do to grow as people and as basketball players and as a team. And there's something, the word infectious gets used a lot, but that also is kind of a gross word in other contexts, but there's just something that makes you gravitate towards someone like that. And it's why he was, I think, such a good fit for that program at the exact right time for that program, following what I think it's fair to say were some, not especially, energetic final years for Bruce Weber.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's really impossible to be recognized for your goodness and also not be seen as soft.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like the players can get away with stuff. That's not the way it is with Coach Tang. He's tough on his guys. He demands a lot of them and himself. And yet he's loved by all of them because he comes at it from such a good point of view. And he constantly puts that out to the world. When he climbed up on the scores table after the KU K-State game in Manhattan and changed the chant, put it to bed. Nobody I knew of was going to finish the KU chant from the K-State student body until Jerome Tang came around, and his goodness, his emphasis on love and supporting your own team first really shined through. It's remarkable to be around. It really is.
Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com joins us here on 580 Sports Talk. It's the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. Make sure you go follow Fitz on Twitter. The handle is @LifeOfFitz, and you can find all of his great work over at GoPowerCat.com. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. And a little bit of a recruiting nugget for you, it sounded like, in your conversation with Jerome Tang, too, Fitz. Seems like this K-State team, not that I'm surprised that they're not done, but sounds like they're still nose to the grindstone looking to add some more quote-unquote dudes to their basketball roster.
Yeah, he wants another senior guard for sure. Another one and done. He wants to buy some more time for his young recruits to mature into it. And he said he wants the best player available. They want to fill their final 2 scholarships. I thought they might just decide to leave one or both open, but no, he said, we're going to fill them. And I'm intrigued by that. I don't know what all's out there, but they're confident. He was very confident when he said it. They're going to find good players. And he was blunt. He was really good in saying that we got some dudes here that we can get back to the NCAA tournament, but that's not our goal. Our goal is the Final Four. Our goal is Phoenix, and we need some more guys to make that possible. And, as good as K-State was last year, it probably could have used another player or two to fill in when, some players were struggling, maybe have another answer against Florida Atlantic. He really is striving for that. And we'll see what he can stir up.
Do you think that is a sustainable model for building a team? And I know it's not apples to apples here, because last year you had Keontae late. He's the, I always thought he only had 1 year of eligibility left. I didn't even know it was a question that he could have come back at any point, but you bring him in as a one and done player for this roster. But he was such a good player. He's an All-American player as a transfer. That doesn't happen all that often. He's obviously a unique case, but to plan for, we'd like to add a grad transfer or a senior or a guy who's played 90 games and have 1 or 2 of them every year. Do you think that in this current era of the portal, that is a sustainable way to do it? Or is that more so just situationally based? Based on this roster we have, we can add a guy like that. We have a spot for a guy like that.
Both. I think he's looking at his roster, knowing that everyone who goes anywhere in the NCAA tournament has veteran guards. He had it last year, and he wants to have it again this year. He's got some really good guards coming in from the freshman class. So I think now he's trying to, get the portal going long enough to get his young players to mature so they're juniors and they're seniors. And he's now got them feeding up through the system rather than having to go shopping. But the portal allows you to go out and, we had someone, injure a knee or transfer unexpectedly. They'll fill it now. We're seeing it happen to Kansas. They're rebuilding their roster, and the portal is just really making it much more accessible to programs to do that. I think you've got to be in the portal to some degree if you want to compete on a national scale. But the bottom line is you need veteran players, and whether that's through the portal or your own recruiting and those guys maturing, it's a tough balance to bring in senior guards and keep your young guards happy. But I think, again, that gets back to Jerome Tang, the kids he's recruiting and the way he approaches it. I think he'll be able to pull it off.
One final thought on the basketball side of things, Fitz. NBA draft coming up tomorrow night. Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, both hoping to hear their names called. Do you have any insight? Have you heard at all where the expectation is that Keontae will get picked and whether or not Noel will end up getting drafted? I'm certain that Marquise, by the end of tomorrow night or first thing on Thursday morning, is going to sign with a team at the very least. But any intel on whether or not he may actually get picked tomorrow?
I'll be a little surprised if he is. I think teams will view him as someone that they don't urgently need. You know what I mean? That we'll take him. There's only 2 rounds, so they'll take him as a free agent if they can get him, because they think he might be in a position to do something. But so much of that second round is foreign players just trying to grab rights and hold on to players. Keontae, I think, will go late first, mid to early second, just depending again. It just takes one to love you. That's my wife. It just takes one to love you. Everyone else can think you're hideous. So the right one loves you, you get picked. And I think he will get picked because he's an NBA player. He's more of an NBA player, speaking of Keontae, than a college player. And you just can't deny despite his size, what Marquise has brought to the table. And I think maybe someone will take him in that second round, take the chance on him. But I think he'll have a tangible opportunity to make a roster, or at least a 2-way contract with someone.
Sarah Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up here on 580 Sports Talk, joined by Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Make sure you're a VIP over there. Absolutely worth it. All sorts of great insight into recruiting, into team news, access to the message board, Wabash Station, all that if you're a VIP over at GoPowerCat.com and 24/7 Sports. You can also follow Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. Did want to get to some football recruiting here, Fitz. Big visit weekend this past weekend for Chris Kleiman's group. I know there were some big names, especially in the trenches on campus for K-State. How did those visits go? I believe it's Grant Bricks who was on campus, the interior lineman from Iowa, among other players. What is the initial word coming out of that big official visit weekend for K-State?
Well, Grant Bricks is a tackle, a true tackle.
Okay.
At 6'5", 280. Considered the best player. 24/7 has him the best player in Iowa, the 11th best offensive tackle in the nation. I think other services have him higher. this kid's really good. And apparently the visit went really well. He's going to visit Alabama. He's got some other things cooking. But I trust my guy, Ryan Wallace, who covers recruiting for me. He's really well plugged in and has a great sense for things. And he logged a crystal ball in favor of Kansas State at 100%. He thinks K-State's going to land him. And this is an interesting development. I'm watching Kansas State not dramatically upgrade its football recruiting, but step by step, stair-step that recruiting up to a new level. This is a really high-rated 4-star recruit, an offensive lineman, a tackle, something that's a big-time commodity for football programs that I think K-State zeroed in on. And Connor Riley and the rest of the coaching staff made a really good impression on him.
How established is that Iowa to K-State pipeline right now? I mean, obviously, Chris Kleiman has his ties there. He's from the state of Iowa. You've got Ben Sinnott, who's an Iowa guy. I mean, there's a number of guys from that state who are on the roster right now. How strong is that pipeline, or is this just somewhat of a coincidence?
No, I think it is a pipeline. I think he has great interest in Iowa kids, just like Kansas kids. And I think it's intriguing that Matt Campbell had a lot of success coming into Kansas City for years, and now we're seeing Chris Kleiman go into Iowa and nab some kids that I know Iowa State would like to have. And it's just kind of an interesting recruiting friction between the two programs flying so close together. But, yeah, I think it's real. I think he knows what he gets from those Iowa kids, as he does from those Minnesota or Dakota's players, Nebraska players. And it's a very common, line of what you get out of Kansas. Just hardworking, sometimes rural kids that are probably got more growth ahead of them in terms of development. And he's all in on that. He's all for that.
Last thing I've got for you, Fitz, before we let you go, is the gamble going to work out for San Diego State saying, hey, Mountain West, what if you gave us an extra month and then didn't charge us extra to leave your conference while not yet officially having an invite? Is this going to pay off for the Aztecs?
I think they're very confident for a reason, but if that reason is they've been told things by the Pac-12, they may be confident for the wrong reason. I still continue to think the Pac-12 is gaslighting everyone. They're lying to their fans. They don't have a very good deal in pocket. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but if they had a good deal, we would know it. They'd be bragging about it. It would be out there, and they don't have that. They're still trying to put together stuff. They're still trying to delay and hope something breaks free. I think they've been told, San Diego State's been told, we got a spot for you, come on over. But there isn't an invitation. There isn't a signed grant of rights. There isn't a deal on the table. And we're coming up on June 30th, which I think we all viewed as the deadline. It certainly is the deadline for them to leave the conference at a certain price or it doubles. So we'll see how it all sorts out. They rolled the dice, didn't they? They might know also that if the Pac-12 doesn't work out, they've got an offer from the Big 12, and we'll just see. Because the Big 12 could bring them on at a great discount that would still look better than what they're getting now or could possibly get from the Pac-12.
I would not be opposed to a road trip to San Diego. I will tell you that much. If that's how this all ends up working, well then, hey, I will side with that and be more than happy with an extra trip or two to San Diego. Tim Fitzgerald is the publisher of GoPowerCat.com. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can find him on Twitter as well, at Life of Fitz, and he joins us for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up every single Wednesday at this time. Fitz, we appreciate the time as always, my friend. It'll be the whole group back together next week, so get ready for Dan's return, okay?
Oh, man, I hope he's all tan everywhere.
I will let you know. I will let you know ahead of time whether or not he got tanned this week.
Okay, buddy.
That is Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com, the absolute best of the best when it comes to K-State sports on the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. Man, I did not see that Wally's crystal ball came in over at 24/7. Super confident for Grant Bricks. If you're not into the football recruiting, and I get it because there's a lot of names and a lot of flips and flops and changes all the time, I get it. That would be a huge win for K-State. That would feel like the next big offensive lineman. And I don't mean big as in terms of size. I mean big in terms of huge impact offensive lineman for K-State football. We've got to get to a break. Headlines will lead off next hour on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 1 hour to go on 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm Brendan Dzwierzynski. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Kyle Manthe is alongside as well on the board, keeping us on the air. Dan Lucero, still off, still on vacation. He'll be back with us coming up tomorrow. Speaking of tomorrow's show, we are off early. In fact, we're off early each of the next 2 days as the Kansas City Royals head down to Tampa, Florida, St. Petersburg, specifically to take on the Tampa Bay Rays. Got a 4-game weekend set, Thursday through Sunday. All those games can be heard right here on 580 WIBW. And because they're all East Coast first pitches, and they all start at 5:40, we are done at 5 o'clock each of the next 2 days. So we look forward to talking to you again tomorrow at 3 o'clock, just getting on with our evenings a little bit earlier than normal. We're with you until 6 o'clock today, though. We've got a busy 5 o'clock hour coming your way. That includes plenty from the 580 Sports Talk headlines world. We've also got a story from college bowling that is unbelievable. It is an absolutely wacky and wild story. And I know that when I tell you it's a story from college bowling, you are rolling your eyes and saying, dude, you've got to be kidding me. But no, I'm serious. This story is absurd. We will talk about that coming up in just a little bit, about 20 minutes from now. And some news from the basketball tournament, one of my favorite summertime events. Get a little basketball flavor, and now we know where the seating is, and that there are going to be pretty much every local team that or every local college that has an alumni team that's playing in this year's the basketball tournament. They're all going to be in Wichita, and some of them are going to even possibly face off in the regional rounds, so we should be excited about that. We might even get an alumni border war game. We might get a Wichita State, K-State alumni matchups. We'll talk about the TBT coming up later this hour as well. Any thoughts you have on anything we're talking about on the show are welcome either on the text line 785-272-9429, or you are welcome to send them our way in the YouTube comment section. Our YouTube channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Just head to youtube.com, search Sports on 580, and we'll be the top result. Just click subscribe right there from the search window. Open up our channel. You can come see us on the live stream, video streaming the show every single day. You can hop into the comment section, check out our old shows, rewind today's program, all that and more. All of our video content on YouTube at Sports on 580 WIBW. With that, let us get to today's 580 Sports Talk headlines, and we will start with an old friend who, well, we just found out moments ago is no longer under investigation. What are you talking about? Who are you talking about? I'm talking about Tyreek Hill, who it turned out yesterday, according to a report from multiple outlets, including WPLG TV in Miami, Tyreek Hill allegedly hit an employee at a Miami area marina, a boat marina, during a disagreement that took place all the way back on Sunday. Andy Slater, who is a sports radio host in Miami, reported that Hill slapped the employee on the back of the head. However, the employee at this time has declined to press charges. The Dolphins said, "We are aware of the situation. We've been in contact with Tyreek, his representatives, and with the NFL." Obviously, and I'm not going to relitigate any of the old stuff, we all know Tyreek Hill's past. We all know the stories, the allegations, the accusations, the suspensions, getting kicked out of Oklahoma State, the video and audio that was released back in, I want to say that was 2019, if I'm not mistaken, the drama with the news station in Kansas City, a whole lot going on with Tyreek Hill in his past. So obviously this threw up some red flags. Well, Andy Slater, the aforementioned radio host, has addressed a new development in the story just within the last hour on Twitter. And he says the Tyreek Hill police investigation is already over. Cops told the alleged victim he would have to go to the state's attorney's office if he decides to pursue criminal charges. He adds that Hill's crew, the people he was with, and when you're getting on a boat, you call it the crew. Hill's crew boarded a boat without permission, which led to the alleged incident. So essentially, hey, you guys can't get on the boat yet. And they said, we don't care. Boat employees told the police that Hill told them, quote, "I can buy you and the boat," and quote, "I'm number 10 with the Miami Dolphins." Dude, don't pull the "do you know who I am" card. Just don't do it. Please. That is an all-time tool move. Do not pull the "do you know who I am?" Now, these are often funny stories. I can share with you a story or two about some former basketball players at a certain university 30 minutes to our east that have pulled that at bars in that specific town, saying, "Do you know who I am?" I will not share those stories, but I could. There are many of them. Come on, guys. Don't pull the "do you know who I am?" Also, if you're Tyreek Hill, and look, the investigation's over, doesn't appear that they're going to press any charges. Okay, fine. Why would you want to put yourself in the spotlight again, where people are going to think of you as a violent person, where you are going to have police up in your business, where you're going to be investigated, where your team has to put out a statement about you? Why would you do that? Of all people, why would you do that? And I really don't know what he was thinking. And maybe when he re-releases a new episode of his podcast, we will find out why he would do something like that. It's just bad decision-making, and that has really marred a lot of Tyreek Hill's off-the-field career, is bad decision-making. And again, I know that might sound flippant about the very serious accusations against him over time, and I do not mean to be flippant toward those, and I do not mean to just blow them off. I promise. I know they're very serious. I just don't feel like I have a place here to, again, I've used the word already, relitigate it, go back over it. So I don't mean to make light of it, but it's bad decision after bad decision. And I don't understand how Tyreek Hill's brain works sometimes. But dude, just a little tip from a guy who is not famous and not high profile. Don't put yourself in a position where more people are going to be critical of you, where more people are going to say bad things about you, when more people are going to bring up your past or talk about how you're a violent guy or how you don't deserve the things that you have. Just don't do it, man. Just don't, for your own sake at this point, just don't do it. Next headline on today's 580 Sports Talk headlines, though, something a little more upbeat. Let's get you an update on the College World Series. I know we've got a number of folks in the area who are big fans of college baseball. So let's get you an update on what the postseason looks like. Earlier today, we had our first team clinch their spot in the finals of the College World Series, the Men's College World Series. For the fourth time in program history, the Florida Gators are advancing there. They took down TCU today 3-2 to clinch their spot in the championship series. TCU has been eliminated. They join Virginia and Oral Roberts, the upstarts from Tulsa, as the three teams from bracket number 1 that have been eliminated so far in Omaha. Bracket number 2, Stanford has been eliminated. What a year for the bat and ball sports for Stanford. The diamond sports, softball in the Women's College World Series, baseball in the Men's College World Series. However, they were eliminated already. Same with Tennessee, who I know is a very popular pick. A lot of really intriguing teams this year. A lot of SEC presence, as there always is. ACC with a couple of teams. The Big 12 represented by TCU. Plus, you then throw in Stanford from the Pac-12 and Oral Roberts, the upstarts. We could have an all SEC World Series, though. Wake Forest and LSU. They are going to play each other tonight at 6 o'clock. Wake Forest, the number 1 overall seed. LSU is the 5 seed in the College World Series. If Wake Forest wins, they are in, and the number 1 team in the nation is going to face Florida for the national championship. If LSU wins, they will have to play in all-determining, all-decisive Game 3 of their head-to-head series. That would be coming up either tomorrow or Friday. I think that would come up tomorrow, if I am not mistaken. Wake Forest already beat LSU yesterday 3-2. So LSU will try to stay alive and keep the World Series going for their run coming up in just a little bit. That game's first pitch is set for 6 o'clock, by the way. So right when we're done, if you are interested in the college baseball, in the ping of the bat in the college game, you'll be able to check that out right after we're done. And that game will be televised, I believe, on Big ESPN. Yes, that is the case. I've watched a little of the College World Series. I've told you before, I'm not a big college baseball fan. The most I've ever watched college baseball was in the early 2010s, 2010, 2011. my older sister, was a student at the University of South Carolina, and they won back-to-back national championships in those 2 years. It was the final year at historic Rosenblatt Stadium in 2010, and it was the first year of the new ballpark in Omaha in 2011. They won both of those. Jackie Bradley Jr., now former Royal, played for those two teams, as did now former Royal Whit Merrifield. He had the walk-off hit in 2010 to win the College World Series that year for the Gamecocks. That is the last time I cared about college baseball. I called a couple games when I was in school at KU. Not opposed to it. I don't think it's a bad thing by any means. It's just not something that I follow. But I do know a couple of things. One, Florida's going to play for the national championship. Two, LSU's got the best player in the country in Paul Skeens, who I believe, at least among college players, is the number one draft prospect this year. Stud pitcher. And Wake Forest is really good, but the number one seed has not won the national championship in a really long time. So odds and history maybe against Wake Forest, but I think Wake Forest versus Florida would probably be the most desirable series. But if you told me, hey, I want to see another outing from Paul Skeens, I would not blame you if you were rooting for LSU to make it to the College World Series final. It is also funny to me that the College World Series is multiple series, and it's all broken up, and there's actually 8 teams and double elimination and all that. It's just funny. I think of World Series like in the Major League context. There is one series, and that is it. The College World Series doesn't quite function that same way. But that's your update from Omaha and the College World Series. That is definitely one event, though, that I would love to get to at some point. The crowd is always awesome. I like Omaha a lot. I went up there with my wife a couple of years ago just for a long weekend. I had never been before. Or that's a lie. I went with Dan, actually, in 2018 for the NCAA tournament. I've really enjoyed Omaha the couple of times I've gone. So that's definitely one event on the sports bucket list, if you will. Have to get up to the College World Series at some point. Same with the Women's College World Series. I know Oklahoma City really turns up for that. Next up on our 580 Sports Talk headlines, we're going to bring Kyle back in for this one. Kyle Manthe, our board op today, also our NBA insider on the program. I saw that face right there. Our big NBA fan on the program. Some fairly major news from the NBA today. A 3-way trade, including a former Kansas Jayhawk even. The Boston Celtics, Washington Wizards, and the Los Angeles Clippers all have agreed on the framework of a trade. It is going to send Kristaps Porzingis to the Boston Celtics. It will send Malcolm Brogdon to the Los Angeles Clippers from Boston, and Marcus Morris and draft compensation are being sent to Washington. Also, the Clippers are expected to trade the number 30 pick, so the final first-round pick in tomorrow's NBA draft, to the Wizards as part of this trade. Okay, so Washington gets a first-round pick trading Kristaps Porzingis, but not Bradley Beal. I don't understand how that's even supposed to happen. It's also expected that Boston is going to have to dump Danilo Gallinari in the trade and probably will lose Grant Williams in the move as well. So, Kyle, NBA insider, who's the trade winner from this 3-way deal?
I mean, the Celtics get the best player, so they're the winner. Kristaps Porzingis is much better than Malcolm Brogdon, and no offense to Marcus Morris, but he's a lot better than Marcus Morris at this point. And I mean, he's the most expensive player, and they gave up the most, but they get the best player, so they get a chance to compete. And the Wizards will begin their quest to win like 10 games this season.
Yeah, that's, the funny thing is that this year's draft is supposedly a good one. Every year, the NBA draft, and if you don't follow it, it probably sounds weird. Well, there's only 2 rounds, but rosters are a lot smaller, so that makes sense compared to the NFL. But you hear phrases like 3-player draft or 1-player draft. Well, what does that mean? There's 60 picks. This year, there's only 58 because of a tampering investigation. But generally, there's 60 picks. How could it be a 3-player draft? Well, Victor Wembanyama, the 7'4" Frenchman, he is the latest edition of the best prospect since LeBron James, although he really is freakish in terms of size and skill set. I think a lot of teams really like Brandon Miller, think he's going to be a really good NBA player. He's probably going number 2 to Charlotte, probably. And then Scoot Henderson, who is also a pretty good prospect. He's from the G League night team. He did not play college ball. He is probably going number 3, although Portland might trade that pick. After that, it's a crapshoot, really. Like, there's the Thompson twins who went to the overtime elite program. Are they going to be good NBA players? Maybe. Who knows? Hard to say. Cam Whitmore from Villanova. He's probably going to be a top 10 pick. Is he going to be a good player? Hard to know. Hard to say. But then you end up with guys like a Grady Dick, who we'll talk about on tomorrow's show to preview the draft, who I think every team in the league would love to have a player like that. Maybe you would like a little bit more of a defensive presence, but good shooter, good athlete, underrated finisher at the rim, definitely a gamer, definitely is not a I'm going to coast and only sit in the corner. No, I mean, he's got a real game. We saw that at KU this past year. And I think teams would see that as like a useful player. That to me is the equivalent, and you can tell me if I'm off base on this, that to me is the equivalent of like a mid-day 2 pick in the NFL. Like, probably not looking at a superstar, but a guy who we'd really like to have, a skill set that's very useful. He's going to play a bunch. It's just not really a superstar. The difference is that's like pick 10 in the NBA, whereas it's pick 50 or 60 something in the NFL. It's weird, but in a league that is so superstar heavy, once you get past the first usually 4 or 5 picks, your chances of getting one of those superstars falls off a cliff.
It's also kind of similar to drafting like a running back or a linebacker in the NFL. So the positional value, it's not, obviously the NBA is more not positional as the NFL, but it's a lower ceiling, higher floor, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit of a safer pick going for singles and not a home run.
Yeah, that makes an amount of sense. I think that makes sense. Porzingis, one final thought about this big trade. One, you mentioned this on yesterday's show, I believe it was. This is now with the Bradley Beal trade the other day. That opened up the world of, yes, now the NBA offseason begins and the drama and the soap opera of all of it begins. Kristaps Porzingis, best player in this trade today. Yes, I agree. How much does he actually improve a team and get them closer to being a championship winner? Because I don't know. I feel like when he debuted, I'm sorry to cut you off. When he debuted with the Knicks, it was this superstar phenomenon, but he was in New York. Since then, it's, Porzingis is a nice player, but is he like a legitimate championship core kind of piece?
He's definitely one of those guys that if he's your best player, you're winning like 20, 25 games at most. Obviously on the Celtics, he's their third best player, but so much in the NBA, it depends on like, can the guy buy into the role and do all the things that the third best player does and not the things that the best player does? And he's never been on a team good enough to actually showcase that since he was shown off as the original kind of unicorn coming in. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. But if he kind of does do those things, then the Celtics got a lot better and didn't really give up all that much to get that much better.
It is kind of funny that he was sort of prototype Luka Doncic. And I mean, Luka is one of the best, top 5 player in the league, probably. He's a superstar, obviously. But then they put them together and it did not work at all. Like, two guys who love to shoot the ball and are great on offense and just don't refuse to play defense. Not necessarily a good recipe in the NBA. That is NBA insider Kyle Manthe helping us out with the big news from the NBA trade world today. A couple more headlines I want to get to from the college basketball world before we wrap up today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. Penny Hardaway's in the news again, and it is not for good reasons. Penny Hardaway has been suspended for the first 3 games of the 2023-2024 season. That was announced by the NCAA earlier this morning, to be specific. So he's only going to miss the first 3 games of the year for Memphis. That includes games against Jackson State, Missouri, and Alabama State. That Missouri game is going to be pretty interesting, I think, actually, for both of those programs, but Memphis should be able to wipe the floor with both Jackson State and Alabama State. So where does this come from? How about an impermissible pair of home visits with a recruit from Dallas during his junior year of high school? This is now 2 seasons ago, the 21-22 academic year. The NCAA rule is you cannot visit a junior recruit until April of their junior year. So according to the NCAA's decision, a former Memphis assistant, who is now, by the way, we know he is Cody Toppert, who is an assistant coach at LSU now, another program that loves to commit basketball violations. He visited this recruit, who has not been named, in September of 2021 2 weeks later, on October 1st of 2021, Penny Hardaway also visited that recruit. NCAA rules require any in-person visit with recruits during the fall months must be made at the prospects' schools, not in their homes. That, by the way, is the writing of the Commercial Appeal newspaper out of Memphis, Tennessee. Penny's excuse is that the issue was that the player's year in school, his eligibility year, was not properly entered into their compliance software. Dude, give me a break. That does not fly with me one bit. And I get that when Penny got in trouble before with James Wiseman, and it was when he was an AAU coach, and he just, stuff at home, all this. I remember, but it was when he was in AAU, and it was before he even got to Memphis. It wasn't an impermissible benefit at the time. He was just helping the kid out, and Larry Brown, but come on, it's just a veteran. Like, Memphis continues to get in trouble, and they continue to fall under the microscope, and they continue to have this circus around their program. And is it all Penny Hardaway's fault? No, it is not. It is not his fault that Amani Bates, for example, clearly has problematic people around him, including his own father. But when trouble keeps finding you, and you keep getting in trouble, and you keep having scandals, and there keep being violations, and now a suspension for said violations, maybe at some point, Memphis needs to take a little bit of a look in the mirror here and say, we either need to make a move. It doesn't have to be firing Penny, but it could be, hey, Penny, we know you're a favorite son. You coach and you played here, and you're one of the greatest players in program history, and people care about you here. But, if another job at another school opened up, maybe you should interview for it. Maybe we'll help you fly out for that interview. Or maybe you do just have to make a change and say, hey, or you just accept institutionally this is part of the experience. I know a lot of people around college basketball thought this was going to happen at some point. It has happened now. And frankly, after Memphis fans were super indignant when he first got hired, and they had a really good couple of recruiting classes, and they have since won nothing of real value, and now they're stuck in the American Athletic Conference, I imagine the vibes are not great around Memphis. And I don't really feel all that bad for the program, because when you hired the guy, you should have known what you were getting into, and you have ended up with exactly what you thought you might be getting into. Final note I've got for you today to round out our 580 Sports Talk headlines, also from college basketball. Antonio Reeves is returning to the University of Kentucky. He is, according to Coach Calipari, on campus. He is taking classes, and he is going to return to the Kentucky program for the 2023-2024 season. He is the first player on their roster who will be an upperclassman. The 9th scholarship player they've got, and the first one who is either a junior, senior, or graduate level player. That is unbelievable. It has been a very weird offseason for Antonio Reeves. I say weird for him. It's been straight up bad for Kentucky. Again, they have one player out of 9 who's older than a sophomore. They've got 7 freshmen and 2 sophomores who barely played a year ago. So they had to get Antonio Reeves back. Now, that recruiting class, that freshman class, is the number 1 freshman class in the entire country. There's talent there. But those classes haven't had a whole lot of success in recent memory with Kentucky basketball. So they needed to get this player back. They had to get Antonio Reeves back. Good shooter, good athlete. But you might ask, if you haven't been keeping up with it, Brendan, what do you mean? Why was this offseason so weird for Antonio Reeves? I should probably give you an explanation for that, huh? He entered the draft. He entered the transfer portal. Didn't end up staying in the draft process, obviously, since he's able to return to school, and he's not going to end up getting drafted tomorrow night. Then, within the last couple of weeks, he had enrolled, allegedly, reportedly, at Illinois State. That is where he started his college career before initially transferring to Kentucky. And the reports were he was closer to finishing his degree at Illinois State. So he was going there to finish his degree so he could enter the transfer portal as a grad transfer. He could re-enter it and go wherever he wanted with immediate eligibility, since he's already a one-time transfer. Then today he shows up on campus in Lexington, and apparently he's raring to go and is going to return to Kentucky. With the transfer portal and with the rules now about one-time free transfer for anyone, grad transfer still have a free transfer, but a second-time transfer without graduating might not get a waiver to play right away. You're going to keep seeing more of this weird stuff happening. You're going to see more of guys entering the portal really late or trying anything they can to make sure they finish classes so that they are eligible to then get into the portal as a graduate transfer when maybe the roster changes after the initial window closes. You're going to hear a lot more about windows and timing and all these various things that are going to make your head spin. And trust me, I know, because my head is kind of spinning over this whole saga. But that is where we are in college sports right now. Like it or not, it's here to stay. I think it is more good than bad. I think it is also, like I said, confusing to follow at times. But this is going to become more commonplace, at least things like it. This specific situation may have been unique even for the new era of transfer portal mobility for players in college basketball. That'll wrap up today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. We've still got plenty more to get to in this 5 o'clock hour, including a story from Stephen F. Austin Bowling that's going to have your head spinning. We'll explain what that story is coming up after this on 580 Sports Talk. I've been so excited all afternoon to share this story with you from Nacogdoches, Texas. Brendan Dzwierzynski here with you, by the way, on 580 Sports Talk. 5:36 on this Wednesday edition of the program. I saw this last night. Rob Doster, friend of the program, college basketball writer, podcaster. He actually tweeted about this, and I still am in disbelief. An assistant coach for the Stephen F. Austin bowling team has chosen to resign instead of being fired from the program after the university discovered that he had an affair with a student athlete. Okay, that's bad enough. Dude, come on. That's not okay. Here's where the drama really gets wild, though. Steve Lemke, the assistant coach, is married to the head coach. His wife is Stephen F. Austin bowling head coach Amber Lemke. So here is the nuts and bolts of the story. This is from the Lufkin Daily News out of Lufkin, Texas. Also, Nathan Haig from the Nacogdoches Daily Sentinel. Those are your newspapers who are involved in this. So here is the key part of the story. Lemke resigned, the 38-year-old assistant, on April 10th from the program that he helped coach to 2 national titles and 2 national second-place finishes. This is a powerhouse bowling program, okay? Young coaches. 38-year-old, married to the head coach. Her name is Amber, the head coach. His name is Steve, the assistant coach. The quotes are incredible. Steve Lemke says, quote, I knew it was kind of a no-no, but there's not a rule saying it can't happen. There's not a law saying I'm going to jail for doing something like this. There's nothing in stone. I guess it's just an ethics code, like we frown upon it, but there's no rule. There's no law broken. Dude, in what profession in the coaching world is it just okay and simply, it's just frowned upon to sleep with a player? Especially when you're cheating on your wife, who is the head coach. How is that just something that is frowned upon? Right? Like, this is bad enough if you are, don't cheat on your spouse, obviously. But if that's bad enough. When your spouse is the coach, that is bad enough. And when you're cheating on your spouse, who's the head coach, with one of your joint players, that is insane. And then to give this quote only adds to the insanity of it. There's not a rule saying it can't happen. There's not a law saying I'm going to jail for doing something like this. That is insane. And for what it's worth, technically, depending on what the age of the player is, there could be a law about it, actually. The quotes only get worse from there. Steve Lemke, we've heard stories over time of, I think everybody's seen a movie or a TV show or read a newspaper article about, husband is gone a lot, working, busy, wife is at home. This is like 70% of country songs written before 1981. Like, husband's gone all the time, working, wife's at home, staying with the kids, just in the house all day, bored, maybe steps out, or flip the roles around, vice versa. You ever heard Let Her Cry by Hootie and the Blowfish? Yeah, same kind of thing. This is a husband scorned, okay? Here's his full quote, part number 2. I was the stay-at-home dad for 5 years with the kids while Amber got to go off and coach the team. And when she'd get back, I'd run practices on top of taking care of the kids while she's back. When they'd travel again, I would sit back and take care of the kids. Then when I got hired on, she almost forced me to run practices. I was a volunteer the entire time before that, trying to help out Amber. Once I got hired on, one thing stemmed from another. I felt like I was doing too much for what I was being valued at. End quote. Dude, I get it. Like, I understand feeling like your value is not being respected. I understand feeling like your significant other doesn't value you or doesn't trust you or is sticking you with the things that they want to do. Like, I get where your frustration is coming from. That doesn't mean you can cheat on them with one of your players. That is outrageous. And the fact that this guy gave these quotes, that's the amazing part about this. When you work in this industry, the sports media industry, you come to realize, and I'm sure as a fan, you've seen this from, press conferences or media scrums where you've listened to the audio here on the show, or you might watch it on YouTube or the local news or something like that. Some coaches or players are easier to talk to than others. I know Kyle has experienced things like that. I've experienced this, certainly. All of the other guys at the station. We've all experienced things like that, right? But to get this kind of access into someone's personal life, this dude was fed the hell up with his wife and with this program and apparently with being the caretaker for their children, which, like, I understand where he's coming from, phrased maybe aggressively. I also want to address this. Vance on YouTube in the comment section, he says, that dude is a turkey. He caused this split. He didn't need a spare on the side. And I'm very glad that Vance made that comment because I am not kidding you. The headline in the Lufkin Daily News reads, spare relationship causes awkward split. They got all the bowling puns in here, folks. That is a Pulitzer Prize winning caliber headline in the pun category at the very least from the Lufkin Daily News. Again, I have been waiting all day to share this story because I can't believe it. I'm not even, I am a public figure because I'm on the radio and I'm not, I hope that doesn't sound like, oh, look at me, I'm a public figure. Like that, it's not a big deal. Like that's just my chosen career path has put me in a place where people know my name. They might know my face. I'm a public figure. But even as a much more private figure than a Division I coach, I would never feel comfortable going in public and airing my dirty laundry like this. And maybe he's just a much more public guy than I would be. Maybe he is just so fed up and tired of everything going on that he had to let it all out, had to tell someone about how miserable his marriage is, I guess. But to tell the newspaper all of this dirty laundry and all of this stuff about how she left me to take care of the kids and I always had to take care of the kids and she forced me to run practice and she wasn't doing anything. And it's not it's a no-no, but there's no rule against sleeping with a player. Genuinely insane. I thought about making this What Is Wrong With You today, but I figured it deserved its own segment. I don't know. Insane is something I've said a few times now. I don't really know if I have any other words for it. I just cannot believe that this guy would say such a thing or that it happened. It sounds like a What Is Wrong With You description caption, right? Assistant bowling coach cheats on wife who is head bowling coach with player, story filled with bowling puns. Like that's essentially what this is. So I appreciate Rob Doster bringing this to my attention. It is unbelievably funny in the worst way. Like I feel bad that their marriage is clearly about to be over, but it's also tremendous content. Not rooting for a failed marriage, but I am certainly rooting for the funny content. So I appreciate the powerhouse Stephen F. Austin bowling team for contributing that to today's edition of 580 Sports Talk. Let's get to a break. A couple of alumni basketball teams from maybe your alma mater are going to be playing in Wichita coming up next month. We'll talk a little bit about the basketball tournament after this on 580 Sports Talk. Wrapping things up on 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday edition of the show. Coming up tomorrow, Dan Lucero will be back. So we will have the full squad back here with you. Shout out to Kyle, by the way, for a great week here in studio, keeping us on the air. I know I'm embarrassing him right now, but Kyle, we appreciate you hanging out with us, keeping us on the air, making sure I don't do anything too out of line. Dan will be back tomorrow, though. We'll talk some Royals baseball, get his thoughts on his vacation down to Florida. And we will also talk a little NBA draft. We'll talk to Rick Peterson for our Investor Credit Union High School whip round. All that's coming up tomorrow on a shortened edition of 580 Sports Talk from 3 until 5. Wanted to touch on this really quickly before we get out of here today. The basketball tournament, the TBT, it is back this summer. It's one of my favorite summertime sports events because, frankly, the Royals have been really hard to watch. And while the Royals have been hard to watch, it gives us a chance to watch something else. It gives us a chance to watch K-State alums, Wichita State alums, 1 year KU alums participate in a do-or-die tournament. It's 64 teams. They put them all in these different regional sites, and it's one and done. So if the KU alumni team, if Mash Street loses, then that's it. It's over. They are done for. And I think it's fun. You get to see some of your favorite players. I know the KU team, Marcus Garrett, Dedrick Lawson, the Morris brothers are the coaches. I know Keith Langford, it's going to be his final competitive games. He is retiring from competitive basketball as a player once the TBT is done for. So I am excited to see this. I know the K-State team has had a lot of success throughout its history. I know the Wichita State team has had a lot of success throughout its history as well. The bracket for the event, though, came out earlier today. And the Wichita Regional, they call it the Super Regional because they've got a full 16 teams instead of just 8. Cincinnati, Xavier specifically, Dayton, Lubbock, Louisville, West Virginia, Syracuse, they all have their own regionals. And then Wichita gets 2 regionals. That includes KU, the Mash Street team, as the number 1 seed in one part of the regional. And lo and behold, who's the 4 seed? Missouri. The Missouri alums, the Show Me squad. It's all Missouri alumni or former players. They're the 4 seed. So if the 2 favored teams in those respective matchups in the first round, KU's alums and Mizzou's alums win, guess what? They're going to play against each other in the second round of the TBT. Also, for those of you who have been interested in the K-State squad in the past, they're the number 2 team in their half of the Wichita Regional. They are going to be in action on July 20th, I believe it is, for their first game. And the number 1 seed in their side of the regional, well, it's the host team. It is the Aftershocks, the Wichita State alumni group. I believe Wichita State has played in, or the Aftershocks, the Wichita State alumni. I believe they have played in every single edition of the TBT, and K-State may have as well. I know there's only been 1 KU team before. They called themselves self-made. It was almost all self-era KU players, or mostly all self-era KU players, or KU alums. So they're going to try to put together a little bit better of a performance this time. Last time the KU alums were in it, they lost in the first round, and Perry Ellis tore his ACL, and it was very sad, and it was somewhat hard to watch. So hopefully things are going to turn out a little bit better for the KU team this time. I haven't seen who all is on the roster for the K-State alums, the purple and black team yet. I got to go take a look at this. The original idea for this I said that like I was a British man. The original idea for this, I always loved that it was 1 team per, one prize, 1 team gets anything. Single elimination, $1 million. This is the 10th year this has happened. I didn't actually realize that. So the K-State team, eventually I'm going to pull this up. I'm vamping right now because I can't find the link to the K-State team on the TBT's website, but I am going to get there. I promise you I will find them eventually. And I will let you K-State fans know if you're interested in this. who is on the K-State roster, the K-State alumni roster. By the way, again, this is happening in Wichita at the end of next month. The 19th is the first day of this event in Wichita. The KU alums are playing on that day. Your K-State roster, by the way, includes Henry Walker, DJ Johnson, Jacob Pullen, Jordan Henriquez Roberts, Justin Edwards, Kamau Stokes, Martavius Irving, Marquise Addison, who did not play at K-State. He actually went to Missouri Southern. Marcus Foster wearing a K-State related uniform. How about that? Things coming full circle. Khalid Thomas, who also didn't go to K-State, but is apparently friends with the guys on the team. Mike McGurl, as well as Thomas Gibson. Those are some really good K-State players from recent vintage, including Jacob Pullen, one of the greatest of all time. So that's your K-State roster. KU's is not fully done yet. If you are interested in going and seeing this in person, again, it's later next month down in Wichita, or you will be able to watch all the games on ESPN, ESPN2, and ESPN Plus as well. Let's take one final timeout. When we come back, we'll wrap up this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk with a quick final word. This edition of 580 Sports Talk with a quick final word. It's tough to watch Brady Singer struggle when you know that there is something in there that can still be unlocked, but that there is a refusal for him to do it. I don't know why he won't throw a third pitch. I don't know if he's scared to. I don't know if it's uncomfortable for him, but for whatever reason, if he's not willing to do it, if he's only willing to be a two-pitch pitcher, that's a bullpen guy. And I think the results for him as a starter this year indicate maybe it's better to try something different with him and maybe move his role to the bullpen as opposed to continue to throw him out there and just let him get teed off on by bad offenses game in and game out. Daniel Lynch last night showed us why a guy with the right stuff you can still have a lot of faith in. But to be completely honest with you, my faith in Brady Singer waning by the outing for the Kansas City Royals young pitcher. That will do it for this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. We'll be back tomorrow from 3 until 5, another early show due to Royals East Coast baseball. Dan will be back with us. We'll talk to Rick Peterson for the high school whip round. We'll preview the NBA draft. We've got some other Chiefs, Royals, college football, college basketball to get to tomorrow on the show as well. Want to give a big round of applause to our guy Kyle Manthe for sticking it out with us for the last week, keeping us on the air. Appreciate him hanging out and being a part of the show, and appreciate you being a part of the show as well. Don't forget to head to YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. You can watch back all the old videos of the show, and the podcast form of the show as well is on 580WIBW.com. But until tomorrow, I'm Brendan Dzwierzynski. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 3 o'clock right here on 580 WIBW.